an introduction to rent. So dive straight into it then. You have two different types of strategies. You've got the rent-to-rent HMO, which is all about renting licensed HMO buildings, such as 5, 6, 7, 8 bedroom houses, and they've already got the HMO license, they've got the planning permission, and we're just renting it. So we're not looking to turn a house into a HMO. We're not looking to take on any roles and responsibilities of the landlord. We're not looking to apply for planning permission or do any of that. We're looking at HMO licensed properties only, and these are the properties. There's so many. You don't need to look at 5-bed houses and then, try and negotiate with the landlord and ask them to turn it into a HMO. There's so many student HMO properties on the market already. You don't need to go and try and change any more into them. So that's what we do. We go on Rightmove, Open Rent. We message landlords on Open Rent. We ring agents on Rightmove. And what we're saying to these people are, we're looking for HMO licensed properties where we can take them on a long-term contract, a company-let contract with the landlord and estate agent, where the estate agent can manage the maintenance, we manage the tenants, and the landlord kicks back, takes it easy, and gets the rent paid on time every time. So that's the whole kind of strategy of rent-to-rent HMO. And then once we've taken on that property, we'd put it on Spare Room, Facebook Marketplace, Open Rent, and attract potential tenants. And then we'd rent the rooms out on a room-by-room basis. And what I tell my students is always go for a rock bottom minimum of £600 profit. So that's after all expenses, rent, Wi-Fi, council tax, a cleaner, you name it. It's all expenses paid for, and then £600 profit at the end. So if you're renting a 5-bed HMO that you found on Rightmove, you put it on Spare Room, you rent all the rooms out, then you're going to make £600 profit. So that's rent-to-rent HMO. And the benefit of working with agents is they have tens, if not hundreds, of these types of properties on their books every year. Repeat business. So once you get in with an agent, you can build your portfolio quite quickly, as opposed to working direct to landlords all the time, who might be limited on amount of properties they have. So there's pros and cons to both anyway. Then you have another strategy called serviced accommodation. And this one, I didn't start with this one. I started with the rent-to-rent HMO because I liked the element of the guaranteed income to yourself. As long as you vet your tenants properly and heavily, you're going to get good tenants living in your house who are going to pay the rent. And then in turn, you're going to get your £600 profit every single month. With serviced accommodation, for me, it was a bit riskier. It was like, well, if I take on a property, there's no guaranteed, you can't move tenants in because it's just put it on Airbnb and Booking.com and hope for the best. But it's not hope for the best. You do a lot of due diligence in the background to make sure this property is going to profit. The only reason I started with HMO is just that guaranteed profit at the end of every month, because I wanted to measure against my salary, my monthly income of my job, and get to a certain level of almost guaranteed income for myself from my rent-to-rent HMOs that I could quit my job. With serviced accommodation, you just don't get that guaranteed element. So that's why I started with HMO, then started a year later in serviced accommodation. But with serviced accommodation, the basics are you're looking at taking on any size property. Even, a couple of my students have a 7-bed in Birmingham, and that cash flow's insane. The cash flow on that is insane. Across 2 months, they made £10,000 profit. It can sleep a lot of people because it's a 7-bed. But yeah, service accommodation, any size property, stick it on Airbnb and Booking.com. It's not as simple as it sounds. You want to go through a channel manager, and it just makes your life easier. You can manage your calendars and nightly rates instead of managing Airbnb individually, Booking.com individually, hoping you don't get nights booked at the same time, and you got to manage each calendar. So a channel manager will manage everything for you. It's just an online platform, really. So you set everything up, and that's the only thing you manage, and then it manages Airbnb and Booking.com from there. So service accommodation, yeah, you put it on Airbnb, Booking.com, rent out on a nightly rate of whatever your due diligence has told you. So let's say, for instance, you've done your research and in that area you think you could get 125 a night. I tell my students, look to break even at 50% of the month booked. So you do 125 times 15. That's your overall income, basing it on 50%. So can you cover the rent and all of the expenses at that point? And then the rest of the month is profit. So that's the basis we go on. And service accommodation is fun. I do see it as fun. You know, these properties are kept immaculate condition. So every time a guest checks out, the cleaner goes in there, turns it back to basic. So it's put back to amazing standard. So every time you go there to inspect it, it's in exactly the same condition as when you finished furnishing it. And you get that proud element. You know, you walk around, it kind of looks like a show home. There's no evidence of it being lived in, really. It's just a really nice place to rent out on a nightly basis. And I get that sense of being proud. You know, it's exactly how I left it when I finished it and it first went live, and it still looks like this today. And the landlords are really chuffed with it as well, because obviously it needs to be kept in that condition, because it's going to go on Airbnb and Booking.com, and your guests expect it to be in that condition. So that's a benefit you can tell the landlord. Like, look, as soon as we finish and it's in amazing condition, come and inspect it. And when you do come and inspect it before it goes live, this is how it's going to be kept all the time. So after every guest checks out, doesn't matter how messy it was when they checked out, it would be put back to this condition. So that's a benefit. I love SA. The cash flow can be incredible. You know, HMO, I think your profit per property is limited. I'd say to a max of 1,100. Some people have had more, but that's quite the rare case. On average, it's 600 to 800 cash flow. With SA, one of my SAs profits me over £2,000 a month. That's it's all about location and how much you can charge per night compared to what you negotiated on rent with the landlord. So the cash flow with SA is elevated, and it's just good fun. It's good fun. So that's the basics, really. That's an introduction of rent-to-rent, the two different strategies, HMO and SA. You can package these deals up and become a deal sourcer. So without taking these deals on yourself, you can search for them, go out and package them up and sell them to investors. And then you can become a credible deal sourcer. You have an investors list. So when you get a deal, you can put this deal on your list, such as MailChimp or Kajabi, press send, and then it just goes out to all of your investors, and you can probably sell a deal in less than 10 minutes. I've seen it done. I've heard it done many times. It's incredible. I've never sold a deal myself. I've always took on my deals because I was just so keen to quit the 9 to 5. I just wanted those properties for myself. Not from a selfish point of view. I didn't need to sell them. I was able to take them on, but I can see the appeal to be a deal sourcer, be a credible deal sourcer. And if I was to be a deal sourcer, I would have the same attitude. Go out to be the best. You know, on social media, everybody knows your name. You're that go-to person to sell deals. So the three strategies are incredible. And I would say in terms of the property ladder, they're probably right at the bottom. But in terms of cash flow and immediate cash flow and the low initial investment to get going is the best. Even though it's at the bottom of the rung, the bottom rung of the ladder, the property ladder, you know, people would deem developments at the top. But in terms of developments, all your profit is when it's finished and you've sold the properties. With rent to rent, you get the monthly cash flow. And you don't own these properties, so you don't own the maintenance of them. If the boiler goes, you report it to the agent, you report it to the landlord, and they get it fixed. So in terms of profit and initial responsibility and your investment to get the business going, it's really good. It's really good. So that's where I started. I started in rent to rent, and it can lead anywhere. You know, I'm looking at buying development, possible developments. There's a barn in the same town as I live. It's up for sale. It's got planning permission. So now I'm in that position. I never was in that position. I kind of wanted to get to that position of buying properties. You know, you save up all this money, or you try and save up money, and you're told that you need at least £25,000 to get into buy-to-let. Until I found out all you need is £5,000 to start in rent-to-rent, and this is where it can lead. And it does. It does lead to be able to invest in buy-to-let developments because the cash flow is so good. Okay, so that's just an introduction to rent-to-rent. Hope that helps. I will see you guys on the next one.